Yeah, so for born in Japan, definitely your Japanese very, very good. Okay. So, yeah, you can still speak in Japanese. So, yeah, then you can, greetings from greetings from Sweden. On behalf of the Institute of Advanced Humanistic Studies at Peking University, I am greatly honored to take part in this great event. First of all, I would like to ask Jiang of the University of Arizona at Tucson to introduce our distinguished lecturer. And I'm greatly honored and humbled in the presence of our leading theologian and also most eminent professor of process philosophy to take part in that of the university. And I'm also grateful that Fan Meijing, Wang Zhihe, Wang Qi are also in the team that is involved in this great event. And we are
Great. Thank you, Professor Cobb, for your kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second 2024 online lecture hosted by the Institute for Advanced Humanistic Studies University. The first one is being online from Tsinghua University. Third, our invited speaker is John Cobb Jr., who will give us a talk titled The Farewell to Secularism and the Move Towards Socialism. Once again, my name is John Wu, Director of the Center for Buddhist Studies and a professor at the Department of East Asian Studies at the University of Arizona. I'm very honored to be today's host. By the way, before I introduce today's speaker, John Cobb Jr., and our special guest, Professor Durrani, I would like to announce that in addition to Zoom for this talk is also live streamed through chat video, Bilibili, and YouTube. If you have a question and the talk, please type your in the chat, and I will read them and translate them and to our speaker after the start. So now let me introduce Dr. John Cobb Jr. So Dr. Cobb is an American theologian, philosopher, and was born February 9th, 1925. Congratulations, Dr. Cobb, for your 100th birthday. He is the pioneers of process theology and has made significant contributions to ecological ethics, interfaith dialogue, and the intersection of religion and science. There has also been active in social and political causes, including civil rights, peace, prison, capitalism. In 1973, he co-founded the Center for Process Studies, for which he provided principal intellectual leadership, and in which the new metaphysics of Alfred North's right path and the child's classroom were fostered and tested discussion with representatives of numerous other fields of studies, including physics, political theory, and gender studies. Through a series of conflict and strength-dependent achievements, the center worked Europe and Asia, especially in China and Japan, extensive scholarly attention to process philosophy and its consequences for contemporary thought. Yes, his many books currently in print include Reclaiming the Church, For the Common Good, Becoming a Christian, Sustainability, and Christ Come Good News Again, and also Emptying God, a Buddhist, Jewish, Christian conversation. But just check out this book, and I'm reading this book, and I'm greatly inspired. So now let me turn to our specialist today, Professor Durrani. So he is a founding director of the Institute of Advanced Humanistic Studies at Beijing University, as well as research professor and a senior fellow of Asian Center at Harvard University. He worked in Cobb from 1981 to 2000. I'm very fortunate to be an advisee of Professor Durrani. I studied with Durrani for 6 years and got my degree from Harvard University. Professor Du is also a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and also a member of the International Institute of Philosophy and academician at the Academia Sinica. For over 50 years, Professor Du has devoted himself to the interpretation of the Confucian classics, to the evaluation of Confucianism from the perspective of cultural diversity in the world, and to the revival of Chinese culture by a creative transformation of the Asian tradition. Professor Du is the author of The Confucian Thought in Action, The Clarity and the Commonality, Humanity and the Self-Cultivation, Confucian Thought, the third as creative transformation, learning, and politics, and many more. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. John Cobb Jr. to give us a talk. Please join me to welcome Dr. Cobb. Dr. Cobb, please.
My title is From Secularism to Business. It is a great privilege to give a speech at Peking University, an institution that is destined to play an increasing role. I spoke here once 5 years ago at the School of Marxism. I was grateful for the chance to think about that very important topic. I'm not sure that the details of Marxist theory have ever played a large role in China, but the success of the movement indicates the deep commitment of many Chinese to ending the kind of poverty that truly harmed hundreds of millions of Chinese people. Someday in the future, when competition and jealousy play a smaller role in global thinking, China's success in dealing with poverty may be recognized as one of the greatest achievements of human history, perhaps the greatest. It may seem ironic that China's great success in the economic field has led to an increase in interest in spirituality. When hundreds of millions of people suffered economically, turning away from the issue of poverty to spirituality, and especially to organized religion, seemed a betrayal. But when real suffering from hunger and homelessness is ended, one finds that human beings have other dimensions. When many people are poor, working to reduce poverty can give rich meaning to one's life. But when extreme poverty is eliminated, it becomes clear that simply increasing wealth does not meet the deeper needs and longings of human beings. Throughout the world, containing COVID gave to some secularists an alternative to poverty reduction as a ground of meaningful action. When religion or spirituality functions as an alternative to dealing with acute economic or health needs, it is rightly condemned. But it turns out that these dimensions of human life reassert their importance when they supplement economic activities rather than work against them or encourage indifference to them. My sense is that this is increasingly felt and understood in China these days. And I believe that research at Peking University may help Chinese think about these questions. In any case, these are the terms in which I think of what I am offering in this lecture. Some Chinese secularists deserve much credit for having focused attention for years on the economic needs of hundreds of millions of Chinese. But if we turn to them for guidance with respect to other dimensions of life, the results can be disappointing. Dr. Wei Ming Tu points us in a very promising direction with his call for spiritual humanism. The hunger of many of us to be helpful and useful to our world is an expression of our spiritual nature. If we do not go beyond secularism, we may end up with intense efforts to find meaning in becoming richer than our neighbors. This is not healthy, either for the competing individuals or for the society as a whole. It has certainly not met our human needs in the United States. We, in fact, look elsewhere. Our hope to produce and share beauty expresses our spiritual hunger. The desire to learn and share truth, even if that is costly in purely secular terms, also belongs here. A special thank you must go to Dr. Tu for giving me this opportunity to reflect spirituality. I hope that I have made clear that secularity has accomplished much that is worthwhile. Where cultural traditions, often religious, have discouraged critical thought or blocked desirable actions, secularity has opened doors that might otherwise have remained locked. But as with so many things that are often useful, wise, when they are expanded to govern everything, the good they unquestionably do is used to justify the harm they also do. That means that while I'm often grateful for the contribution of secularity, I always oppose secularism. It is not an overall guide. In fact, it has many of the problems that it sees so clearly in much traditional religion. Today, in many countries, including both China and the United States, secularism has become more powerful in shaping society than any traditional religion. And in both these countries, it blocks consideration of topics that urgently need study. We continue to celebrate much that is secular, while strongly opposing secularism. I think that we can continue what is positive with secularism as urgency, and at the same time offer spiritual meaning. Secular people at their best urge us to focus on the practical needs of the earth. Earthists point out that the earth is a unity. What happens to the part affects the whole. They recognize that we are part of the whole and profoundly dependent on the health of the earth. Many secularists focus on extracting from the earth what is immediately helpful to a relatively few people. In general, secularists tend to focus on the present and the solution of the problems human beings now face. Perhaps the sharpest distinction between secularists and earthists is that the latter love the earth. They try to avoid injury in the process of satisfying immediate human wants. They call for us to love the whole in its complex wholeness in a way that leads us to care about the consequences of our actions every. Typically, secularists do not think in terms of love. They do not posit any norm beyond what well-informed people want. Earthists think that the well-being of the planet should take priority over the desires of those with the money to extract more resources from it. Secularists tend to take people's desires as given. Earthists try to evoke love of the earth so that people will consider what contributes to its long-term being. There are important relationships between the earth, the sun, and the other planets. One might ask why one should not be concerned about the whole system. We certainly should not be indifferent, but the opportunities to have an influence on what happens in other parts of the solar system are very rare. The reason I select the Earth as the project of devotion rather than the solar system or the cosmos is that our scientific and technological advancement actions have given us enormous influence on the future of the planet, whereas they still have very little effect on the remainder of the solar system. Even more important, there may not be life elsewhere in the solar system. Our special interest in this planet is fully justified by its remarkable support of so many forms of life. Whether we love the earth or view it primarily as resources to meet our wants may make the difference of whether human beings survive. Throughout the modern era, secularism has presented itself as the sane alternative to the craziness of religion. Today in the United States, its clearest commitment is to exclude the traditional ways from an equal place in the public sphere. It focuses attention on this one, human condition, and claims to reject all restrictions on critical thought. Surely concern for the world and the application of critical rationality are essential to the resolution of our problem. One might hope, therefore, that the dominance of secularism would lead to serious concern for the fate of this planet and its inhabitants, to a rational response. But clearly it has not done so. Why? What is the secularist world lacking? To answer this question, I turn to the major expressions of secularism in the modern world. I select four that are significant in shaping current thinking and behavior. They are science, philosophy, higher education, and economy. My invitation to speak to you is one among thousands of indications that urgently needed changes are occurring in China. Limitations of secularism are being recognized, even in its stronghold. China may lead us move secularism. First, science has directed its attention to the physical world and developed methods of study that have proved extraordinary proof. Chiefly, there's also been scientists who have alerted us to the destructive effects of our actions on our environment. Individual scientists have given us the leadership we urgently need, but the scientific community as a whole has gone about its business, little affected global crisis. When scientists offer the guidance we need, they are sometimes regarded as stepping outside their proper science. For example, a scientist in the United States who calls for changes in the economic system to save our planet is likely to get little support from fellow scientists. Second, philosophy, beginning with Descartes, separated itself sharply from theology in order to be fully secularist. It has had a fascinating history, which has also affected the wider society in many ways. But the dominant school of philosophy today, linguistic analysis, contributes very little needed response. Fortunately, a group of philosophers have brought their analytical skills to bear on issues related to the environment. They are tolerated in the wider philosophical community. Yet that community has not been much affected by this subgroup. Most members of this subgroup tend to environmental issues because of passions they bring to philosophy rather than derive from it. Third, the modern university is a fully secularist institution. The research university is organized around academic disciplines, including sciences. These disciplines aim at being value-free. This organization of knowledge is designed to press forward the frontiers of research, and it has been brilliantly successful in this regard. Some of this research is useful for understanding environmental crises, suggesting responses to it. More of it is useful for improving the quality of production corporations and increasing its quantity as well. However, serving corporations rarely contributes to saving the earth. More often, it hastens catastrophe. Since the university does not promote its own values, research goes to where the money is available. Overall, university research contributes more to the earth's problem than to the solution. Fourth, the ideology that now governs the world can be called economism, which is a fully secularist way of thinking. Its principles are articulated in one of the academic disciplines, economics, which has been particularly successful in becoming completely secular. Economism is based on the choice of economics to be the mean of science. Its basic orientation is to promote the growth, this undercutting possibility of a healthy future. Many people, especially secular humanists, emphasize their secularity without falling into the category of secular. As humanists, they are concerned with values, answering deep human questions of meaning. They are often passionate and desire to solve. They want to do this secularly. To the secularized Christian, all this seems admirable. Yet Christians suspect that the admirable humanistic passion for dealing with the needs of human beings is not engendered or even supported by strictly secular considerations. In the West, it usually comes from Greek and Hebrew sources, mediated by Christianity. If secular humanists want to be free of its influence and join the secularists, then humanism is likely to decline. Another problem is that humanism, by obviously distinguishing in some ways, separating the human from the rest of it, has failed to direct the needed attention to how human beings depend on and damage the rest of the planet. Too often, humanists have allied themselves with other ideologies that so focus on human well-being, they fail to attend the sustainability of that well-being. Truly sustainable human well-being depends on a profound sense of our planet. Some of us believe that we need to think of ourselves as that planet. Then, what kind of philosophy is needed to see the earth, its crisis, and humanity in a way that inspires and guides and quiet action? At this point, we return to Earthism, based on process relational thinking. Earthism is a new global movement that challenges secularism. Earthists see that in some ways, theirs is a recurrence to ways of thinking that are characteristic of hunting and gathering. Indeed, the spirituality of Earthism draws on these ancient traditions. Earthists find a reverence for the earth and an appreciation of human being as fitting into the pattern of the earth that was lost in all the discovery culture and religions and has been most systematically checked in economies. But Earthism is not a recurrence to primal religious thinking, sensible. This was formed in a context in which the natural was the dominant reality. Human beings, both nurtured and flattened by it, embodied its own science. This was very different from modern. Temporary Earthists experienced the relation of human activity and the earth by different, and their understanding of the earth relies extensively on modern postmodern science. Some Earthists take extreme positions, seeming to be misanthropic and powerful what human beings are doing. But in fact, it is not possible to ignore human beings in the way economists ignore the natural. They are themselves human. The earth they celebrate, reverence, Earthists know the human species is an important, valuable part of the whole. They argue that it should recognize this and act accordingly, respect the other parts of the system, animate and inanimate. Economistic thinkers assume one goal is the satisfaction of humans. If they find that some humans want nature to be healthy, they will try to find how much they are willing to pay for this. Thus, the condition of nature can be assigned monetary value, but way can enter the economistic system. Hence, it is an exaggeration to say that the economistic thinking takes no account of natural. This way of considering significant nature is offensive to it and led to the collapse of the system. The difference is sharp. Earthers are offended at the economic valuing of the earth only in terms of what people can pay to preserve it. They see the health of the earth, including its human inhabitants, as of supreme importance. They recognize human economic activity as one important element of that system. But they see it as having assumed an altogether inappropriate predominance. Instead of dominating the earth, the economy should serve the well-being of the system. Doing so certainly includes meeting the needs. The goal is to meet those needs in ways that disrupt and degrade the whole system as little as possible. Another way of putting the contrast is in terms of top-down and bottom-up thinking. Economistic thinkers typically seek to expand human activity as much as possible, so as to create as much artificial wealth as they can. But the process of doing so directly enriches major economic actors. But as they become richer, which is supposed to trickle down from the believers of the dominant ideology think that this wealth can satisfy human desire, including desire to preserve bits of nature. Earthers typically see the regeneration of natural systems, focus attention on those human beings who live most intimately with those systems. The health of these systems improves the livelihood live in that improved economic condition provides a basis for livelihood, also for more remote, usually city problems. In general, the application of economistic policies concentrates population, megalopolis. The application of Earth's principle leads to decentralization. Economism calls for localization. Earthism favors emphasis on localization. Economism leads to development policies that emphasize large infrastructure projects requiring technical skills and capital investment far beyond domestic people. Earthism emphasizes projects that are decided upon people in which they can participate in generating. Economism seeks national strategy. Earthism favors community. Economistic policies concentrate the control of the global economic process in fewer and fewer hands. Earthist policy leads to local control. Economistic thinkers typically believe there is no problem about indefinite expansion. This indefinite expansion is their goal. They meet the warnings of physical scientists with skepticism. History has shown their satisfaction that technology that is such an important capital can solve many problems. Natural limits are supposed in the way of continuing economic growth. They point to many past incidents that illustrate this. First instance, take the warning of physical science with great seriousness. even if there should prove to be no physical limits to economic. They deplore the effects on the earth, especially people that are closest to the land, of the growth that has already occurred. They deplore the mindset that sees these negative effects as insignificant comparison with the positive factors of the rapid expansion of industrial production. In any case, their sensitivity to conditions of the Earth system leads them to believe that there are indeed limits to its ability to provide resources at a strong basis. Limits to growth appear to them to be evident realities that economism ignores at the peril of all forms. Earthism does not deny that economic growth can have some of the benefits it claims. Nations with their larger per capita incomes do tend to have less extreme poverty and hunger, better wages, working conditions, and better health care and education. In general, population growth is slow in these countries. Attention is paid to power. Nevertheless, Earthists are not impressed by these claims. The human condition, which is measured in these ways, can be improved equally or more by other policies than by those that aim at it. In most of the prospects of ever attaining sufficient capital income, these matters to take care of themselves are remote. Meanwhile, the immediate effects of growth-oriented and cut in just the opposite direction. Earthism is the one spiritual force in the universe now capable to challenge secularism in general and economism. From time to time, it has succeeded in checking particular economistic policy. At Montreal, for example, despite opposition from some economistic thinkers, leading nations agreed to reduce that effect. Their production of chemicals and cultural labor. Pressures from Earthists led the United Nations to organize the Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro, 1992. Some hope this might signal shift dominance of economies to that of Earthism. Under the leadership of the United States, economism triumphed. Nevertheless, there were some concessions to Earthism. Even economistic thinkers want economic growth to be sustainable. Where Earthists can point out convincingly that particular patterns of economic growth are not sustainable, economistic thinkers can conclude that changes are needed. Their commitment is that these changes not interfere with the economistic project growing. The influence of Earthism has led to a shift in management, economic growth to sustainable development among economistic thinkers. This means sustainable economic growth as measured in standard national mechanisms, such as gross domestic product. Their assumption is that economic growth continues to be the end, toward which policies are. But when Earthists point toward changes that can make the growth easier to continue, they accept greater efficiency in the use of energy, for example, is acceptable in this economy. Moderate atheists work closely with moderate economistic thinkers to find win-win situations. That is, they seek changes that will both bring greater cooperation over a long period of time and also reduce the pressure on states. Fortunately, there are many such projects. As the focus is kept on these, the difference of commitment. So, other atheists, however, are convinced that the more fundamental issues cannot be ignored. Top-down, growth-oriented economy continues to degrade the earth, even if at some slower pace would be the case. Technological improvements were not. For atheists, the goal of increased consumption in natural countries must be directly challenged, so that technological improvements can be used to give space for growth. Policies should be directed to the regeneration of nature rather than simply slowing down its decay. Population must be slowed everywhere, so that the effort to meet basic human needs can be realized without destructive increases. There is no sign that Rio marks the beginnings of an earth's age. On the contrary, the commitment to economic growth and the pressure of resulting activities on the earth system are themselves growing. Earthists view sustainable economic growth as an oxymoron. Physical system of the earth as a whole limits the economic subsystem that grows within it. Earthists can hope that before it is too late, there will come a tilt which Earthism supersedes economy as the dominant force. If that happens, there will be global efforts to subordinate economic activity to the well-being of the earth and all its inhabitants. To my understanding, what China means by logical civilization has deep convergence with what some of us in the West are calling Earthism. China is taking the goal of ecological civilization seriously, not only in words but also in real actions. The Chinese government has laid a lot of emphasis on environmental protection and emission reduction in recent years. Although the goal of ecological civilization has found much support wherever it has been discussed, no country has yet followed China. The philosophy that supports China's leadership is China's life philosophy of the unity of humans and nature. People are my brothers and sisters in all things, my parents. This is in sharp contrast to the philosophy that has dominated the West for hundreds of years, especially since Cobb. President Xi indicated its emphasis on protecting natural technology. As we protect our eyes, is a good representation of this philosophy. Given the profound Chinese tradition stresses openness the oneness of humans and nature, the Chinese political system, and the awakening of ordinary people to logical consciousness, I am convinced that China is the place most likely to achieve ecological civilization, as well as Earthism in the world today. I bless China.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cobb. Thank you for sharing your wonderful thoughts. And I think in your talk, you contrast two modes of thinking. So one is the secularism, another is what we call the Earthism. So you criticize secularism because it failed basically in modern society. All the scientists, economists, and modern universities, they turn to secularism. However, lots of problems cannot be solved. While on the other hand, we see hope as well. So in your talk, you give us a very clear vision of a new kind of worldview, which is Earthism. And there's a deep spiritual dimension. So I really share with you the conviction that this new version of worldview actually point to the new direction, including ecological civilization, the idea, such kind of idea proposed in China. Thank you very much. So now I think we can open up to discussion, comments, and questions. But first of all, I think I will invite Professor Duane to give us a short response.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Jiang. What I've heard over the years, especially now, the idea of Earthism, a form of humanistic notion that considered heaven, earth, community, and the individual as a holistic package for understanding the human condition. In a way, pose a very powerful and profound challenge to economics and the kind of grandiose notion of the human as a vehicle by which all other dimensions of experience, earth, heaven, community, and individual well-being, relegated background. I think what Professor Cobb gives us is not only a reconfiguring of the notion human flourishing, which is both and not just either or. And this both and is precisely a way out, but at the same time, the only way that is left for human survival, let alone human flourishing. And it is in this context, it resonates beautifully with the core values, some of the most deeply felt human sentiments concerning the unity of heaven. And this deeply felt sense of harmony, sense of harmonious interaction between the human and the world beyond, and among various kinds of human civilizations. Also, the way that more we continue to flourish, the more sustainable the human situation is, which is a way out of this incredible dilemma between simply productivity, simply growth, and the whole idea of depletion of natural resources. And I think this idea of Earthism, more than sometimes we use the term humanism, is the notion that not only we are integral part of the earth, but in fact, human beings are not sustainable as a species, not even sustainable as a surviving source of human flourishing. Human beings, under the impact of a grandiose notion of need, of expansion, gradually loses the human, not just the sentiment, the human rationality, that sense of the term, of trying to expand our base, not only as the basis for survival, but as a basis for flourishing. And in fact, the human beings today, as we understand, either from UN year of growth, year of sustainability, year of human harmony, mutual reference, but also very notion of humans grow in the cosmos gives us a new vision. The new vision not only is not at all conflict between wealth and power on the one hand and human survival on the other. It's really the idea of the most reasonable, and in a way, the only way that we'll be able to sustain our own way of life, as well as the life, all aspects of relatedness in the world. And this idea of the harmony between not just the individual and the community, but the earth as a sustainable environment in which we live, but also the long-term solution to human need and to human function. So what Mr. Cobb, on his philosophical, especially Whiteheadian process philosopher, that particular perspective of growth, regrowth, sustainable growth, but also transformation, retransformation, and sustainable transformation, gives us an idea of not only human survival as individuals, but human survival as a integral part of the survivability of the earth. And we are very, very grateful for such a broad insight, which covers not only human beings as sentient beings, as sensitive beings, human beings as living and bearing entities of the universe. The only way that we'll be able to look forward towards a bright future. I'm very grateful, very humbled, and really very much indebted to this grandiose vision of humanism, but the humanism not at all in conflict with sustainable human growth at all levels. I think in a deeper sense, economism as a surviving discipline in the social sciences, also as a blessing, as a calling for human survival, all turn out to be an integral part of this earthly system, this idea of loving and caring, compassion as an integral part of human survival. Thank you very much for your wisdom, for your such a beautiful picture, beautiful message of human survival.
Thank you, Professor Zhu. Dr. Cobb, do you have any quick response to What does it do? Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, I feel quite inspired by two good thinkers. Yeah. So now we open up to discussions and questions. Please type your questions in the chat, either in English or in Chinese. Right now we have the first question by Wu Ling Peng. So the question is what's the relationship between individualism and wholism as human being? So their existence and development. So that's kind of not a complete sentence, but rather it is a comment. So I'm not sure that Cobb can comment on the individualism and human holism.
Human what?
Human as a whole, to develop and survive.
Well, I think that individualism is I won't say the only, but it is a product of substance thinking. Substances are inherently the idea, the metaphysical idea of substances. So they are self-contained, and they are therefore separate from other substances. And this idea that came from Aristotle. I think Aristotle modified it in ways that kept it from being as bad as it became. But in my view, this is a very dangerous stuff. I think very few people can achieve happiness if they cut themselves off. I think the opposition was typically the total picture is much more complicated because it's also a process. The Bible is a process. It is not the substance. And the Bible has played a very important role. I won't go off on that kind of topic. I just mean the West has many different traditions in it. East has many different traditions in it, but nevertheless, I think that the Westerners have thought the East did not develop individual responsibility, the need to think for oneself and so forth, as fully as they should, as desire. And I think that's true, but if the self that you're thinking for is already recognized, that very thinking, which grows out of the community, is what creates the new individual. You don't contrast any longer. The individual is a community of influences that have come together. You can avoid that painful choice with no individual at all. On the one side, I just think it's wrong. Individual people need to take responsibility as individuals, and I'm not just saying, it's not me, it's me. Otherwise, you cannot have the progress that you want. And the real problem requires that people be willing to stick their necks out in the West and do things that are dangerous for themselves. And that's going to be more true as the choices before us become course, it's unlikely. But the Whiteheadian view is that individuals become every moment, all over. But what the individual is a selective unit of any character. It's the substance view of individuals does a great deal of harm. There is no such thing, and yet so much of our philosophy and science is built around the idea that kind of. So it's bad for our science, and it's bad for our religion, and it's bad for our society. So I'm hoping that there really is a real shift of understanding in which people come to understand that community is really a more fundamental phenomenon than the individual. But it's made up of individuals. The individuals that make it up are the products of right? Put those two over against each other to misunderstand. I'm sorry. You get me started on that.
Yeah, so the big questions, the big concepts. Yes, and then let me move on to our question. Actually, I think it's from our simultaneous translator. So I will read the English version. How can the positive traditional Chinese civilization play an innovative role in the process of secularism changing to Earthism?
I think Earthism is a Chinese thing. So, my picture is that China has never, deep in its culture, given up its ancient tradition, but it has felt the need in order to join the rest of the world, namely our American West. So I think that universities try very hard to get their students to take Western way, and I hope they fail, because I think their success would be great.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean they shouldn't study the West.
Well, of course.
The West obviously did some things that China had not done, just as China had done some very good things that the West had not. But science is so much the test. It's only recently that people have gone deep enough in the science. They're beginning to find out that Chinese were right on that.
Yeah, thank you. So next question coming from Tao Wanshu. So the question is in Chinese. I will translate into English. Professor Cobb, what do you think the role of art, especially traditional Chinese art, such as calligraphy, painting, what's art role in the process of globalization?
Well, the point about art is to say that when one states human needs, the grossest of simplest way, needs food, water, shelter, medicines, and things like this, you leave out what really gives meaning to life. And Chinese art takes all of these things, but has a way of presenting them that reaches people at levels in their being that the language doesn't. If you don't bring in the art language, that's And I think that the danger that China, I think it is avoiding it. So I really, I'm not intending to be criticizing now, but I think when China gave up so much of its own culture in order to become an advanced nation, as allowing the West make the definitions that established it. Most of the political structure and schools, enormous change, enormous westernization really did go on in China. There was danger that Chinese sensibility and Chinese sense of what is beautiful, what is important, be deeply changed. And a lot of that's happened. But nevertheless, Chinese has maintained its art. And that is the refuge in which it has been allowed. I'm afraid sometimes it's somewhat sentimental rather than at the heart of that. So I'm hoping that the changes that have recently taken place in science will be seized on as a way of saying we reshape much of China, including education, on Western ideas just before the evidence was coming to be very critical of those Western ideas. I'm of course thinking of process thinking and substance thinking as being fundamental. So I really am. I mean, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just being polite or something. I really think that China has a chance making a contribution to the world. I won't say no other country. I don't want to make that kind of statement, but that Westerners cannot make. I think that process thought is trying, but obviously when you speak a language that encourages substance thinking, your process sensibilities are not going to be fully. And we Western process folk think we have that problem, that direction, while the Chinese had for a generation problem of getting rid of the Chinese sensibilities in order to become Westernized. It's all kind of crazy, but that can make life interesting. I hope instead of just making people give up, will generate some very important discussion. And I really hope China will feel a responsibility to the planet, but it will have to become very critical of what it has done, of the extent to which it failed to allow the Chinese sensibility to shape its science. I think now Chinese science would be welcome. There are not many Chinese who've been trained in a way that able to. I mean, I think it's beginning to happen. But I just mean it's not all you have to do is just think authentically. Since that's true, but thinking authentically after you've been educated for 20 years, thinking another way, not really so easy. But I feel like we are partners. I mean, the Western process thinking and Chinese recovery of the use of indigenous patterns of thought in relation to what had been set aside in favor of the West. But I think we're very close, but of course we've gotten there through very different history. That means we're different. But we feel the kinship, and you have reached out to us as if you had some of the same. And I hope it can be a fully positive experience for both. And I think that the time within the scientific disciplines, I think the time is right. But usually people wait about 50 years after a time, right? A few individuals. This is becoming too personal, I'm afraid. Things that I said and was doing under the influence of Whitehead 50 or 60 years ago are now considered frontier creative ideas. My thinking is much more accepted now than it was when I was doing thinking. And I think that's an indication that enough things have happened that people recognize the need for a transformation. And certainly the kind of transformation that we have derived from Whitehead is one of those possibilities. In China, the transformation that can come out of the deepest levels of the Chinese spirit, I think it's another possibility. And I don't think they need to compete with each other. They need to help.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there's a comment in the chat saying the Chinese tradition philosophies such as the Book of Change can definitely enrich the right piping process philosophy.
Yes. Oh, there's no question that the traditional Chinese philosophy is much more on the side of process. Sure. So her point out to me, because I don't speak Chinese.
我不知道啊，我真的是耶。
Western languages, you got to find out who done it. The noun, pronoun. You got to know what the sentence is about before you can really listen to the rest of the sentence. I think in Chinese and Japanese and Korean and some of them, like the event happening, primary. Of course, that includes who done it. But it doesn't. You first got to get clear about who that who is before you can understand. And that doesn't follow.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I think we need more questions. So right now in the chat, I didn't see any other questions, but please type your questions over there. While we're waiting for more questions, maybe I can take this opportunity to ask Dr. Cobb a question about economic growth. The same thing with Cobb, you emphasize the new kind of mode of thinking such as Earthism also rely on economic growth, community, human flourishing, and human conditions. So I'm wondering, by mentioning economic growth, what do you think about the economic growth and global capitalism? Right? Because when we talk about economy, today's world is basically dominated by capitalism, especially this new version of early capitalism. So what's the take of Earth's towards this global capitalism phenomena?
Well, I think I was talking about economism instead of about capitalism, but they're very close to close to related to each other. other issues about human well-being other than the needs which could be considered bodily needs, they would say, oh, of course. Then the question is, when one describes the kind of world wants, do we take seriously what these other needs are? And that's where secularism has gone so far to say, no, don't take them seriously. And if we can learn to ask the question, if this bill is passed, how will that affect the people of the country in not only in terms of their income, their housing, of the physical things, but also in terms of whether they find meaning in life and whether they are the sort of person whose presence brings joy and happiness rather than annoyance, irritation, exasperation. If you know what I mean. If you ask full of questions that almost everybody knows have to come into the picture at some time, and don't separate out the physical needs, then on the activities. To start with, you may decide that this particular area increasing the amount of physical goods available is more important than have people having meaningful conversations or jobs, something like that. But that is not to be taken for granted. Money, having goods does not always make people happy. Happiness is more important than quantity of possessions. I think almost everybody knows that. One has to be careful. Right now, when we see what is happening in Palestine, to make any statement which belittles the importance of having food would be wrong. Food is number one. And Israel ceasing to allow Palestine to get the food, to bring anything into the discussion other than how to break through that would be wrong. But that doesn't mean that if you solve that problem, you have solved the human problem. And I think our university and our governments have been too economistic. And that might not have been true if China had stuck to its own cultural bearings, but because it's such a large extent imitated Europe and the United States. And I hope you could just say, oh, but look at such a university, see how well they've done. I don't know enough to make any negative statements about that. I hope there are universities that are really using best traditional Chinese culture to deal with contemporary issues. I don't think then that the quality of human existence is going to be neglected, because I think that was the heart of Chinese. So maybe it's already being done. If not, wonderful if Peking could do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful thought. So, by the way, I saw more questions coming in the chat, so I will follow the order here. This question from Zhang Ye Huang. So the question is in Chinese, but I will translate it to English. Professor Cobb, I think the spirit of Chinese philosophy, only very few people can truly understand it. But however, for the majority of the commoners, we still need to use ethical norms to confer them, such as the ethical norms, such as the 5 relationships, the emperor and the subject, father and the sons, etc. So what do you think about this view?
I'm not quite sure how we're distinguishing between philosophy and the understanding relationship. Is it that it would be hard to put in words the theory that justifies
the ethical relationships? In traditional Chinese, all the Chinese people follow 5 kind of relationship between the sovereign and the subject, and also father and the sons, friends, husband and wife, for example. These are the common norms everybody follows. But however, the true spirit of Chinese philosophy is very abstract and transcendental. So this person seems to feel it's very elite to talk about Chinese philosophy, but for the majority of the common people, they look at the concrete guidance for their daily life.
Well, I don't think I'm the one to answer that question. I thought that classical China was a place where the relationship between the teaching of Confucius, for example, and these answers to questions about the 5 relationships would be closer than often in the quest between metaphysics and the practical judgments that are drawn from it. But yes, he sure just told me to ask you to answer the question.
That's true. I have to go for a suggestion, but you should answer the question.
Yeah. Ask Professor Du to answer the question.
Good. Professor Cobb has given us ample food thought. The other person as the center of relationships. Continuous interaction process of having resonance on the various that whole notion of earthism. But this is a new word for I think way that very rich and multi-dimensional, covering whole range of really gives us an inspiration for further action.
Yeah. So I'm glad that Professor Du joined the conversation, because the next question is actually asking Professor Cobb about your view of Professor Dewey's spiritual humanism.
Okay. So we are at least showing how interactions can take place, and everything comes out of a context. It wouldn't be the same thing in a different context.
So, do you have any thought on this? This is from Chen Maozi. So he asked your view of Professor Dewey's spiritual humanism. Yeah, so we can move to the next question. This is from Zhao Yuan Wan. The question is, could you please comment the relationship between Earthism and egocentrism? Ecocentrism, I think. There's a connection. Yeah. Not egocentrism, ecocentrism.
ECO.
ECO, yes, not EGO. As a typo here.
Well, I think that if we follow any one of several lines to come out at a very similar place, Earthism, of course, to achieve what it wants to achieve, depends upon a radical notion of how everything is. That the Earth, if the Earth is thought of as a substantial self-imposed entity made up of substantial self-imposed entities, then it didn't have what we're meaning by Earthism. So the use that we're making of Earth is that it is a community of trillions upon trillions of ants, all of which are somewhat related to everything that's happened in the past, will have to be taken account of by happens in the future. And I think ecocentrism means that we are looking at everything primarily how its relationships support and sustain how it contributes to others and things in the future. These are all congenial to each other for different purposes. One or another may work better. I got along without the word Earthism all along. But when I heard it suggested, I didn't really hear Earthism. I just heard people talking about the Earth as being what we are devoted to. Seeing if we could call that Earthism. I use that ism in terms of what one is most devoted to, what one is most willing to sacrifice. If I'm an Earthist, that means I'm willing to sacrifice myself if that is needed for the sake of it. And that I probably won't do unless I have a sense of the Earth as a community. So these things are all very, very similar, and I hope we don't have quarrels about them. We just say, well, I like this term, but that term is also fine.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that isn't fine, that all the ways of trying to break out of what isn't fine should work together. Not quarrel about which one is best. I think Earthism has a chance of catching attention. Ecology caught attention for a long time, and that word has been around a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
If I say something I could say by talking about ecological civilization, and instead do it about Earthism, it may throw a little different light and may capture attention and stimulate thought. That doesn't mean that what we've been doing at the heading of ecological civilization is bad. Well, it's very different.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I have a comment from Annie Bai. I'm taking Chinese medicine for my health. So I think Chinese medicine reflects the Earth's philosophy. So this is her thought. So what do you think? So actually, it's also my question because you mentioned well-being quite frequently. I recently had a chance to interact with a group of health professionals and medical doctors, physicians, and when they talk about well-being, it's about health, anxiety, right? So more kind of a physical body problem. So I'm not sure if Ursus can have some new approach to improving people's health, happiness.
Ursus get sick. They learn from the doctor.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Maybe we can allow 2 or 3 more questions. But let me go through that first. Let me see. Okay, so this question is about the book of change. So the Earthism, what's the connection between Earthism and the idea of self-strengthening without the rest in the book of change and the Taoist idea of following the destiny of heaven and the response to human birth,
不是，
and also reading the
太火了，竞争很好， 真的。
So this is a very broad question, also related to the connection between traditional Chinese philosophy and Earthism.
I don't think I'm the person to really answer that. I just say Earthism probably puts a larger focus upon the physical than traditional Chinese philosophy. I may be quite wrong.
Yeah. So this question from Chen Maozi again. So I will read it through. This is once again going back to his question about your view of Professor Du Ming's idea of spiritual humanism, but he explained here. He says Confucian tradition intends to integrate the 4 dimensions of human experience, questions of the self, community, nature, and heaven. Idealize the sense, integration of the body and the mind, fruitful interaction between self and community, variously understood from family all the way to the global community, sustainable relationship between human species as and the nature and where is that? Nature and the mutuality and the mutual responsiveness between the human heart and the mind and heaven. It is this sense that underlines the Confucian tradition, as there is a firm conviction that human beings are multidimensional. I think this gentleman is quoting from Professor Du Ming's idea of spiritual humanism. So he would like to know your response to that.
Well, I just was saying that Earthism has a very strong emphasis upon physical health of the planet. Mm-hmm. And I don't hear that in what is just been said. I don't see any contradiction. But probably we are more aware that things are really going wrong physically with the ecosystems of the planet than would have occurred to someone in Confucius.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe we can allow one last question here. So here we have a question from Joyce. What do you think of the application of Earthism for global leaders and global leadership?
Well, if it were possible to get those who have the greatest influence on what is done globally to ask the questions we want to ask. Whether they use the word Earthism wouldn't make too much difference. But it would mean that they saw how everything was interconnected. And it would mean that they saw how there are physical and mental and spiritual dimensions in everything, all over. And that these things were important. And so I don't think there's any argument, just they might emphasize different features.
Right.
We just want to say that the health of this planet is crucial. And we're learning about how remarkably balanced it has been, so that there are large areas of the surface that are able to support plant life and animal life. That's an amazing achievement. I mean, think of the other planets in the universe. We don't, in our cosmos. I doubt very much that anything comparable has been developed. And I mean, I may be wrong, but it isn't as if this is just, of course, a very natural thing. Because we have all these wonderful physical things which give us the basis of having a wonderful spiritual life and so forth. It's all maybe unique to this planet. And that's Earth. It's the one planet that we know supports life. Is open to all kinds of creative development. And so just to think it's one more planet among others, it's really very extraordinary. We should be willing to sacrifice a lot for the health of this thing.
Great, thank you. So now I think at the end, Professor Duening, do you have any final thought for this talk and any questions you have?
I simply want to support overall project of Earthism, and which is more comprehensive than simply logical. In that sense, that Cobb has given us not just a word and concept, but also agency towards certain kind of communal thinking, which is both critical and at the same time sympathetic. To me, as great sources of inspiration. That's all.
Thank you, Professor Du. For staff of Guardian US, any announcement for future events? No? Okay, great. Yeah. So I think this will. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that Professor Cobb, through today's lecture, have converted all of us to Earthists. I think after this talk, the term Earthism will become very trendy. So everybody is going to talk about that. I think this is a very successful session. And on behalf of the audience and the Institute of Advanced Humanistic Studies at Peking University, we want to thank Dr. Cobb once again for your wonderful talk, for the opportunity to share with us your insights. Thank you very much.
thank you for the opportunity. I hope we can maintain a very close sense of belonging together with having common needs and common insight and the common world to live in.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this will conclude our session here. Is that okay, Jen Bao? So we just thank you very much. Yeah, we thank you everybody. Yes, Professor Cobb, that's great. That's the commonality for the human polarity. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Good day, everyone. Yeah. All right. See you next time. I'm the polyglot from American side. 吴老师就这样了，谢谢。好了，谢谢。两位老人家辛苦了，对，他们很辛苦，所以他自己就赶紧早点结束吧。对。